On Larry King Now, Superstore's Ben Feldman.
I feel it's kind of this sort of perfect combination of a nerdy old man and a complete child. And I think the writers on this show figured that out about me pretty early on and have tailored this character to that. My first real job was a year doing that show, understudying Jason Biggs.
What's it like to understudy? You go in every night hoping he's sick?
Yeah, you do. You really wish unwell on one particular person. You know, it's not a Hollywood thing, it's a men in power thing. Wherever there's a spotlight shining on powerful men, I think we're gonna see a lot more of these stories. And I think people feel, victims feel a lot more confident speaking out because there's now an army of them. So yeah, I think this is just the beginning.
Plus,
he was in my wedding. When you have Wolf Blitzer at your wedding, everybody ends up taking pictures with him. You go back through the wedding album, it looked like he was the best man.
All next on Larry King Now. Welcome to Larry King Now. Our guest today is Emmy-nominated actor Ben Feldman, who's left his mark on Silicon Valley, Mad Men, Drop Dead Diva, Cloverfield, and various theater roles on and off Broadway. Ben stars in Superstore, currently in its third season. The ensemble workplace comedy airs Thursdays at 8 p.m., 7 Central on NBC. Can we compare Superstore to The Office?
You can. We share a lot of DNA, I think, with The Office.
Yeah.
Our executive producer was an EP and a writer over there, too, so we're part of The Office family, I think.
Why does Superstore resonate so well with audiences?
I think, I mean, there's this sort of surface obvious stuff, which is it takes place in a big box store. It takes place kind of in a very American, St. Louis, just sort of an American city. There are no ghosts or vampires or time travel or anything like that, which is harder to find these days, I think, on TV. I think it's about normal people, and I think the people on the show reflect who you'd see if you walked into a store anywhere in America.
It's a comedy, but it deals with social issues, right?
Yeah, we're an issue show, they say sometimes.
Does that make the writing difficult?
No, I think, to be honest, the fact that we get called an issue show a lot, people ask a lot about, you know, we've done a healthcare episode and child care and gun control and everything. But these are stories, these are conversations and dialogues that normal Americans have, I think. And so these writers are just writing normal people and funny versions of normal people having normal conversations. And then when we go out into the press, it becomes we're, you know, the issue show.
You've called your character a bumbling elitist, fish out of water.
Yeah.
You also said you two have a lot in common.
I mean, that description could probably be applied to myself as well in real life.
You're a bumbling elitist?
I think, I mean, there are friends of mine who would probably agree with that. Maybe not bumbling, but yeah, there's sort of this, like, I feel it's kind of this sort of perfect combination of a nerdy old man and a complete child. And I think the writers on this show figured that out about me pretty early on and have tailored this character to that.
You've credited your castmates with being funnier than you.
Yeah, yeah.
You're not generally funny?
I think I'm often the funniest guy in a room full of unfunny people, and I'm happy there. It's a big fish, small pond kind of a thing. But then you move out to Hollywood and you get put on a successful, you know, popular comedy, you're bound to be surrounded by some extremely funny people.
You recently said to Steve Harvey, a lot of shows 3 seasons and everybody hates each other. This is not the case on Superstore.
Yeah.
Why not?
Casting? I don't really know. It's sort of anybody who's worked out here knows that there's not really a formula to it. I think it's just sort of magic and coincidence.
There's no star.
Luck. It doesn't feel, there's not that person. You know, there's America Ferrera, who's at the top of the call sheet, but she doesn't feel like this looming presence that's, you know, she's not off in her mansion trailer over here while you know, it feels it's a community and it's an ensemble. And everybody just gets along really well. We go out together.
Have you been on sets where people didn't like each other?
Yes, I have.
What is that like?
I've been one of the people who's done a lot of not liking. And I've probably been one of the people not liked as well.
And how do you deal with that? You go to work every day.
I mean, it's a job. At the end of the day, you know, you go and you say your lines and you try, you make do. I mean, I've not been on sets where it's so ugly that we're screaming and yelling at each other every single day, or not talking in between shots. But yeah, I've been on sets where I go home at the end of the day and I say, oh my God, I can't, she drives me insane. I can't do it, I can't do it. And my wife patiently listens and says, you're very lucky and you have the easiest job on the planet, get over it.
So you can be selective now in your career, can't you?
To a degree, I can, yeah.
To a degree?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think TV-wise, I've been lucky, and I think Mad Men really helped. You know, things change when you, no matter sort of what level you come in on that show.
When you're on a big hit.
When you're on a big hit that people here in LA or in New York, the bosses, the people who make the other shows. Because I was on a show before that people watched that had a bigger audience than Mad Men.
What, Silicon?
No, well, no, I was on a Lifetime show called Drop Dead Diva. And
that one had a bigger audience?
Huge. It was, and to this day, people come up to me all the time and bring that show up all the time. And it's, you know, people talk about Mad Men, it was such a big, and it was incredible, and it was one of my favorite shows in history. But 12 people watch Mad Men. They just happen to be everybody's boss. So you heard about it,
do you keep getting offers, or are you limited because you're on a hit show?
I'm on the show, we shoot 22 episodes, which is a tremendous chunk out of the year. So there's a couple months over the summer where it's just a mad dash to find something that you can cram in before you're back at work. And then every once in a while I get to visit, like Silicon Valley, I'll go, I feel like that's the show that I vacation. I have like a timeshare on Silicon Valley.
How do they let you do 2 shows? Well, how does NBC
Thank you,
bug
NBC. Which camera is NBC?
Do they bug you?
It's a process. You really have to make a case for it. You have to promise that it's only going to be this many. And that's not NBC, that's every network. It's a lot of work to be able to do, but they've been really kind, and I'm going to do a bunch of episodes of Silicon Valley this year.
Our guest is actor Ben Feldman. We're discussing his DC roots and the appeal of nerdy men boys, or men boys, whatever they call them. We'll do that after the break. Stay with us. We're back with Ben Feldman. He's one of the stars of Superstore. It's a big hit on NBC, Thursdays at 8 p.m. You grew up in D.C.?
Yeah.
Were your parents into government or politics?
No, they were both advertisers. We had no connection to politics. My mom was a copywriter, and my dad did like commercial print real estate.
Are they still there?
He is. My mom lives out here now.
Oh, they separated?
Yeah, they got divorced when I was 8, and then he's remarried to a great woman, my stepmother, and I have a whole family with them and a sister and everything, and then my mom lives out here.
You grew up in Washington. What was that like?
It didn't really resonate. Washington didn't resonate as like Washington, D.C. until I moved. When I grew up there, it was just a place where my parents bugged me and I had after-school activities, and that was really it. I didn't like D.C. when I was there, but I've since gone back, and it's actually a really cool city. I love going back there now.
Do you like the politics? You weren't involved in it, were you?
No, I was never involved. I mean, the closest, like my parents' best friend, one of their best friends is Wolf Blitzer, and that's the closest we get to even being involved in the political world.
The Wolf Man, I worked with him
We used
for
to,
26
by the way,
years.
Rosh Hashanah, we would spend like Rosh Hashanah at his house, Wolf and Lynn Blitzer's house.
26 years I know him.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
he's a good guy. He was in my wedding. When you have Wolf Blitzer at your wedding, everybody ends up taking pictures with him, and then you go back and even if you could have like a giant star there, and there were some recognizable people, but there's something about him, and I imagine it's similar for you. There's almost this, yeah, but can you believe this guy's here? You know, like this is different. Yeah, because they feel so familiar. So you go back through the wedding album, it looked like he was the best man.
Well, you're a Hollywood guy now.
Yeah.
What do you make of this whole Harvey Weinstein thing?
I think, I think it's just the beginning. I think,
Not
necessarily for him, maybe for him, probably for him, but I think in general, I think we're going to hear, it's not a Hollywood thing, it's a men in power thing. And I think, next it's going to be someone in tech, or, whoever, wherever there's a spotlight shining on powerful men, I think we're going to see a lot more of these stories. And I think there's sort of the floodgates have opened. I think people feel, victims feel a lot more confident speaking out because there's now an army of them. So yeah, I think this is just the beginning.
Sad.
It's really sad, yeah. And it's politics, and it's Hollywood. It's everywhere.
You were recently in a play called The Seagull,
Spelled like a Jewish last name, not the Chekhov play.
yeah, on which you say about nerdy man boys.
Yeah.
What is a nerdy man boy?
I mean, it's not a real thing. I think I just said that, but it's I think it goes back to what I was telling you before about the I'm a child and a nerdy old man at the same time, and I think that's really what it is. I think that's the niche that I've people hire me to play that character a lot.
You said in an LA Times interview that you're attracted to women who roll their eyes at anything you do. That means you're a glutton. You're like being put down.
I'm a masochist, yeah, I think. No, you know what it is? I think it's my mom was that way. My mom would call anybody on BS, and I recognize that as how a healthy relationship with a woman is a woman who's not impressed by your idiocy.
You loved theater first, right?
I do. It's what I went to school for.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to Ithaca in upstate New York. And I moved to Manhattan and I did a play. They made The Graduate into a Broadway show.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was Kathleen Turner, Lisa Silverstone, Jason Biggs, and it was my first. I was in college, and we did like a showcase, and I met an agent who sent me out on some things while I was still in school. And one of them was Biggs was leaving for a little bit to shoot a Woody Allen movie and needed a replacement for while he was there. And I
you
went
were the Dustin Hoffman character?
I auditioned for it, and I went a bunch of times, and they flew me. I thought it was the biggest thing that ever happened. They flew me from Ithaca, New York to Manhattan, and I was on a Broadway stage auditioning with Kathleen Turner. You know, she's down, Benjamin, do you think I'm trying to seduce you? You know, like, and Lisa Silverstone, and we're doing the scenes. And that was like a highlight for me. I could have just died. I could have gone home there. I didn't
You
need
didn't
the part.
do the play?
I ended up losing the part finally to Josh Radnor. For about 3 weeks, I thought it was mine. And then Josh Radnor, who was How I Met Your Mother and a million other great things, he ended up doing it. And that was smart, because he was older and smarter than me and had more experience. And then they had me come in and take over small parts and understudy. So from my first real job was a year doing that show, understudying Jason Biggs.
Have you done, what's it like to understudy? You go in every night hoping he's sick?
Yeah, you do. You really, you really wish unwell on one particular person. No, he never got sick, so I didn't even have a chance to wish. Everybody else got sick. Every other understudy went on as the part they were understudying.
Can you leave after the second act?
No, you got to stick around. At least in my situation, because I also covered other parts too, so if anything happened, I knew, I think, 2 or 3 other parts as well as Jason's.
Did anything ever happen?
I was on every night, but I was the bellhop pushing, you know, something across the stage, or guy playing pool in the bar behind the actual scene.
Did you ever do any big Broadway show?
No, that was the last. I did that. I moved out here immediately to do a show with a bunch of Broadway stars. I actually moved out here to do a show called The Mayor, and it was Christine Ebersol and Harry Groener were my parents. And Anna Kendrick was my little sister.
Really?
And Lizzie Kaplan was my girlfriend, and
What
and Adam
happened to
Sandler
her?
was the producer. We shot an episode and a half, and the WB said, "Get out of here, this is ridiculous."
Coming up, we'll talk about secret talents and strange jobs with Ben Feldman, plus whether Ben will return to Silicon Valley next year. We'll be right back. We're back with Ben Feldman. He stars with other stars, great ensemble, Superstore. Will we see you in the 5th season of Silicon Valley?
You will. There's a couple episodes that I'm going to do coming up really soon. I already went to a table read of the first episode, which is hilarious. But you know, I'm also about to have a baby any second now, so
You're going to be a father for the first time?
for the first time. So that may be a conflict with Silicon Valley. I'll have to reassess.
How close are we?
I mean, to the point where when you go to your next break, I'm going to check my phone to make sure that everything's okay.
Could be today.
Could be today. We had thought a couple days ago we had a quick little false alarm, but yeah, it could be. Ideally, it's going to happen this week because it's my hiatus.
Are they going to induce? They could induce.
They could, but you know, we don't want to do that if we don't have to. I don't think.
T.J. Miller was very outspoken about his decision to leave that show.
Yeah.
How did you feel about that?
I mean, I don't have too much of an opinion. You know, I'm a guest. I kind of visit on that show, and I know TJ, but I never had scenes with him, so I wasn't really around to see that dynamic.
Will the show miss him?
I think so. I mean, he was. It's hard to. I'm very interested to see, and it was really cool to be at the first table read because I was very curious to see what that show is without that aspect of it. But I think they're going to be, I mean, they got a lot of real funny people on that show, and I think the show will go on.
Okay, we play a little game of If You Only Knew.
Okay.
And you don't have to answer them. It's not a trial, but we...
Do I get graded?
No.
Okay.
Who is your childhood celebrity crush?
Winnie Cooper, probably. I'm like every guy. Winnie Cooper from The Wonder Years, or Topanga from Boy Meets World.
Guilty pleasure?
Lots of ice cream. And
secret talent?
Tap dancing.
You could tap dance?
I had to study a whole bunch of tap dancing in college, yeah.
Who's a person you trade places with for a day?
Gosh, I'm not even, this isn't even BS. I wouldn't. I don't want to trade places.
Good. Something you wish you were better at?
Singing.
What should we be paying more attention to?
The climate crisis that we're in the midst of right now.
Yeah, boy, are we.
Yeah.
Does anyone doubt climate change?
If they
How could
do,
you doubt it?
It's astounding to me.
What's the weirdest job you've ever had?
I never had any weird jobs. I guess scooping ice cream was weird.
Where did you do that?
My first job was Baskin Robbins. I was a 14-year-old.
Really?
Yeah, I got fired for giving it all away.
In what city?
In Potomac, Maryland, just outside of
You
DC.
were behind the...
They hired me, and then I gave out everything to every
What do
one
you
of
mean,
my
you
friends.
gave extra scoops?
Or not even extra. They didn't. My friends didn't pay. I just gave them buckets of. I mean, it just was a collection.
Did the
of everything.
manager see you?
Oh yeah, it was on camera. And what's funny is the guy that owned that Baskin Robbins is friends, coincidentally, with one of the executive producers of Superstore. So we've come full circle. Yeah.
What's the best compliment you ever got?
When a family member tells you they forgot it was you when they forgot it was me when they're watching me on a show.
That's great.
Yeah.
Can't do better than that. Strangest fan encounter?
You know what? It's funny. It's always been exactly the same since the very beginning of my career. I went, when I first started out, I did a big Hilary Duff movie, and shortly after it came out, my girlfriend at the time and I went to a concentration camp in like Hungary or somewhere like, just this, it was like one of those middle, not like the camp, but where they went in the middle of, on their way to the camp. And we were standing there looking at a bunch of black and white pictures and just basically crying. And a giant Canadian teen tour came in. And I wasn't used to celebrity or taking pictures or anything. And there's a whole bunch of kids, probably like maybe 13 or something, taking, like little kids with braces, smiling and giggling and taking pictures with me. You know, my arms around these little kids in front of just a wall of the Holocaust behind me. It was the most awful. It was insane, and it was the strangest, and it's never gotten weirder than that.
What never fails to make you laugh?
When a physical comedy, I think, if someone stumbles. I'm a child, so, you know, you fall over, you fart, I'm gonna laugh.
If you weren't an actor, what would you be?
Chef.
Really?
And I can't even cook. I'm a terrible cook, but if I wasn't an actor, I'd find a way to be a chef.
Tell me something people don't know about you.
I owned a lot of parrots growing up. I don't know.
What?
I had tons of parrots. I don't know. There's so many. I talk so much. I literally
Did they all
can't think of
talk, the
anything.
parrots?
No, they would imitate me and my mother and laugh at us, and then I'd accidentally let them out into the backyard, and we'd have to buy a new one. So.
Was it weird to have them talk to you? Isn't it
Yeah,
weird?
parrots are strange. My sister-in-law has a whole bunch of parrots in her house, and one of them. Can you curse on here?
Yeah, curse.
Great. She's got a parrot who every single time it hears a toilet flush, it goes, ew, oh shit. I don't know how it learned that, but the parrot does that.
Ben will answer your social media questions in our final segment. Superstore airs Thursdays on NBC with a Christmas special on December 5th. More after this. Our guest is Ben Feldman. You owned a wine company called Angelica Cellars.
I did, yeah.
How'd you get that name?
Pain in the Angelica, it was originally called coquelicot, which is the French word for poppy flower, and it was named after, my mother used to live in the south of France, it was named after the poppy flowers that were around her building in the south of France. My friend, Eduardo, and I, who made the wine, used to go there and drink a lot. There was already a wine called coquelicot, weirdly, from California. Almost the same label. So we named it Angelica Cellars, which is his mother's middle name. Interesting story, maybe.
What was your friend's name?
Eduardo.
Eduardo?
Eduardo Portocrero.
You knew someone named Eduardo?
Yeah, one of my best friends since I was a little kid.
the Sonoma wildfires must have hit home for you.
Yeah, it was. I mean, no one I knew in the business or who just geographically was near there was affected. Thank God. I checked in with everybody, and everybody was fine. So then, of course, after worrying about them and all of the people affected, I worried about the wines out there as well, and what's going to be affected there too.
We have some social media questions for you. Christopher Stotts, can you share some of your experiences from Friday the 13th set? And did you have any input into your death scene?
No input. No. You don't mess with Jason, with a Jason murder. I had a sex scene that was my first or second sex scene, and it was when I got to set that day. It was the middle of the night. We were in the middle of the woods at 4 a.m. in Texas, and I showed up, and the costume people said, we didn't realize it was going to be this graphic. We thought it was just going to be kind of a quick, whatever. So we didn't build what they call a sock to wear so that you look naked but you're not. So they had to build one out of pantyhose and a thong, and it was. You know what? You asked me earlier what was my weirdest job. I think having sex in Friday the 13th was my weirdest job.
By the way, every actor has ever told me sex scenes are not sexy.
No, they're the worst. They were the. People always ask,
Move your arms, watch your legs.
Yeah, people
40
say,
people.
is your wife jealous? Does that bother her? No, because she gets it. She knows how much these scenes suck.
Bazinga Sucker, what a name.
Great.
What's the worst advice you've ever received?
Maybe not advice. I had a theater teacher early on who, when I first wanted to act, who just, it wasn't advice as much as he just never cast me in anything, and for a moment I was convinced that I was a terrible actor and I was gonna give up this silly hobby that I had when I was in high school. So I think it was more active advice, but I'm glad I ignored it.
Man of 84. How did you prepare for playing a character as complicated and tragic as Ginsburg on Mad Men?
A lot of stress and anxiety, which just comes naturally to me. Yeah, I think just a lot of, I think you get on that set in Mad Men and you put on the costume and you're surrounded by the cigarette smoke and the whiskey and the mid-century architecture and furniture, and it just sort of, you become, it was easier than one might think on that show.
Juicy Wids, what is it about the theater that draws you back to it?
It's scary. I think it's important, if you have the opportunity to do something that scares you, that's the thing you should do.
But you have them right there, the audience.
Yeah, well, when you get them, when you've got them, you feel like you're the most powerful person on the planet. So it's a selfish, it's a high that you can't recreate in front of cameras.
Jerry Boren, how often do people confuse you with Thomas Ian Nicholas?
It's a good question. Quite a bit. A lot earlier on, a lot more. I still get, guy at an ice cream place last night asked me if I was Scott Baio. I was like, well, he's 30 years older than me.
You were nominated for an Emmy in 2012 for your role on Mad Men. Did that change your trajectory as an actor?
The Emmy did not, or the Emmy nomination did not. The role itself did. I think that show was like entering a club, and suddenly you know a lot more directors and producers, and you know a lot more famous people. I'll never forget, I was doing an interview when I was nominated, it was my first season, and I was on some carpet. It was one of the first Emmy events, and a woman grabbed my arm in the middle of an interview on a carpet, which never happens, and was like, I'm sorry, I just want to tell you, you're doing a great job, and then she ran off, and I turned back to the camera, I was like, did you guys get that? That was Amy Poehler, who just interrupted this interview, and I was like, this is a different world than I was used to. So the show changed things.
You ever want to direct?
I am directing this. I'm going to be directing an episode of Superstore later on this season. So, in keeping with doing things that terrify me, that I could potentially.
So, did you ask them or they ask you?
I asked them. America Ferrera directed an episode last year, and I said, well, if she's allowed to, can I? And I think their hands were tied at that point. they couldn't say no. So I might have strong-armed them into it, but I'm going to do the best I can to not completely.
Where do they shoot Superstore?
Universal, so just up in the valley in Universal City here.
Got a big set?
They built the store on 2 stages, and then we got another stage for swing sets. We shot the pilot in a Kmart for a week. And then they rebuilt everything on a stage. And then, last year, they tore down that entire stage because Universal needed to build more park, because that's really what's important over there. So we moved a stage over so that they could take our old stage.
Ben, great meeting you.
Thanks for having me. It's great to
Thanks to my guest, Ben Feldman. Superstore airs Thursdays at 8 p.m., 7 Central on NBC. You can always find me on Twitter at King's Things. I'll see you next time.